at the end. Okay, so that's recording. So, hey everyone, we're here today to talk to Brielle Nickoloff from Witlingo, and she's a conversation designer and a product manager at Witlingo. With that, I'll let her introduce herself.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. So I joined Witlingo a few years ago as a conversational designer, and because our team is very small, all of us wear a lot of hats right now. So I do some design, I do some product marketing, did a little bit of product management. So yeah, we've launched 2 products so far. Our latest is Buildlingo, which is a voice content management platform, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later on, I'm sure. But yeah, that's kind of an intro to me and Witlingo.
Yeah, and you've been in the space for designing voice sort of conversations for a while. Alexa and other places. So we are sort of interested in talking to you about, from a designer's perspective, what has the journey looked like so far? What excites you? What frustrates you? And then from not from just in general to Alexa or Google Assistant, but in general on voice itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I started out in this field probably like mid 2017, right when it started to pick up a little bit. Back right when I graduated, nobody was really using the term VUI. Like a very certain subset of people in the industry had started using it, but we're seeing such a wide variety of ways that people now kind of talk about this field, and so kind of what we're seeing lately is that there's, and this happens, I think, with any emerging space where there's not a ton of awareness about how important and how incredibly intricate a voice design, a good voice design interface is. So just like how it took graphic designers a while to sort of get a spot at the table, that's kind of what we're seeing right now with voice. Because all humans are just naturally expert conversationalists, and so it doesn't seem that difficult to really design a good conversation, but we're finding that, like, truly because of that reason, it is really hard to kind of take ourselves out of that natural experience and then analytically design a usable conversation.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. And I mean, so can you tell a little bit of your background, what you did in university, and then what got you into conversation design? Like, you said you graduated and joined with Lingo, so what made you go into this direction?
Yeah, so actually, I studied neuroscience and linguistics in college. So I earned 2 degrees, and my main track actually was pre-med. So I was planning to become a doctor, and that, but my true passion sort of was always linguistics. Like, I loved thinking about language and studying that the most. And kind of around the time that I was a senior and graduating, there became a lot of excitement around designing for Alexa, designing for Google. So this whole field sort of started to emerge around that time. And just a quick shout out to anybody that is a creative writer or a screenwriter or linguist, of course. We really need people that love doing that and kind of are of that mind to be thinking about how to really create delightful, usable conversations on these platforms.
So as a designer, when you're thinking about building these experiences, what are some of the key things that goes into it? Like it's like, I'm going to take the analogy of a graphic designer or somebody thinking about building a web or mobile app. You start thinking about the colors about it, the aesthetics of it, the feel for the UI. In this case, words are really the UX around it. So as a designer, how do you approach that problem?
Yeah, great point. So it's such a shift in the way that we think about a user interface, right? Because up to this point, it's really been about how to make a keyboard super usable, how to make a phone like the original QWERTY keyboard, and then it of course expanded towards the visualizations that we use on websites and apps. And so all of that is we can kind of picture that in our head now, and we know what it is to see an aesthetically pleasing website or app, or be like kind of frustrated by one that isn't very usable. But when it comes to voice, it's really difficult to think about like what is truly contributing to highly usable VUIs or VUI voice interfaces. So it's this isn't a perfect metaphor, but I've sort of likened it before to if you are sort of choosing the shapes and the colors and the overall kind of flow of a web page or an app page, you can sort of liken that to like the vocabulary and the phrasing and the overall just like the words that will actually go into your voice experience. And then of course there's sort of like a layer removed from that, which is the navigation, and that's kind of like the general infrastructure, which would become like the branching dialogue trees and how you're guiding the user through that.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. So before we dive deeper into that, can you talk a little bit about Witlingo? What you guys are building at Witlingo, and how are you guys using voice technologies?
Yeah, so we at Witlingo, we really want to make it so that it's super easy to produce content on these voice channels for individuals and for businesses. So what we launched in November of 2018 was called Castlingo, and it's essentially an app you can download on your phone and record little snippets of audio content. So somebody with like a flash briefing, or somebody wanting to produce ongoing news updates about their, I don't know, their field or their interests or what have you, they can use Castlingo as sort of an out of the box solution to do that. And we launched on Google, we can make it into a flash briefing. What we've just launched is Buildlingo, and that is more or less a voice CMS. So if your team, say in an enterprise situation, wanted to kind of get started with voice but didn't want to go out and hire a fleet of VUI designers, this is sort of an out-of-the-box platform that will make it so that you can post content and continually update it completely on your own without touching any of the Google or Alexa dev portals, soon to be Samsung as well. And again, you can do that through your phone app, and then Buildlingo also has an associated portal online where you can actually upload audios and then receive analytics about how people are using it and what sort of questions people are asking, so you can be totally like constantly updating that.
So that's awesome. That's actually Buildlingo looks sounds pretty interesting. Yeah. Cool. So if you were to think about it, I want to do a little bit more of a sort of like an exercise kind of thing. But imagine somebody comes to you and says, "Hey, we want to build an Alexa skill or a Google Home skill." What would be, as a designer or as a team who's working on this, what would be your suggestions for them? How can they approach that problem? And what we're seeing at Botmock is that a lot of these people are coming from different backgrounds, right? There's no VUI designers graduating with that kind of skill set. And it's like you have a writing skill set, you might have interaction design skill set, you might actually have a more of a product designer sort of background. How should they approach this?
Yeah, that's also a great question. So that's kind of why we are sort of creating this white label solution for anybody to templatize a Q&A sort of experience, because every website, every company, anybody can come up with frequently asked questions about their space or their company, and then kind of turn that into a conversation with Buildlingo. But if you are starting out with kind of you want to develop an experience from the ground up, and a company comes to you and says, hey, we want an Alexa skill, or we want a Google Assistant action. What do we do? Like, what sort of problems are we supposed to be solving here? It's not immediately obvious. Like, sometimes, like, if you're thinking about a mobile app for a brand or a company, it can the point of that app could be a little more obvious. Like, are you trying to buy things? Are you playing games? That sort of thing. You kind of have to go through that same process with voice, but there are a whole new set of use cases and environments that you're now taking into account, because one is that, you know, Alexa and Google Assistant on Google Home are not mobile, right? They're not like in your pocket anymore. They're plugged into your kitchen or your living room or something like that, and so that's going to just present an entirely new set of constraints to think about. One example is early on, before we launched our products at Witlingo, we were building custom skills for companies, and a baby food company came to us and kind of said, like, okay, where do we start? What should we do? And we began by doing a lot of really thorough user research about what sort of pain points somebody who uses this brand's product actually come across at mealtime, and what sort of fun ways can we like come up with to solve it with Alexa or Google.
Cool. Awesome. And again, so from a thinking perspective, we see a lot of people jumping into, you know, Alexa skill kits or Dialogflow or Watson and saying, okay, I'm just going to go ahead and start building these things and see what that looks like or feels like.
Yeah.
Is there a step before that you guys focus on or recommend doing things differently?
Yeah, so at Witlingo, because we're more product facing now, we're not dealing with that side as much. But personally, as a designer, I think okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and say right now, I think that this wording that the bigger companies are using about being a dev for voice, it's almost like that's the only label that has really come about, and they're almost like merging developers and designers and not really making that differentiation at all. So and I don't know why they're doing that, because I think they have the resources to sort of make that distinction. But yeah, absolutely. I think you don't have to know how, you don't have to be super familiar and be very skilled at these Alexa dev portals and like any of these dev portals to actually create usable experiences. Usually you will be working with a developer who knows how to do that, and the designer will be the one creating it in tools like Botmock, or you know, kind of laying it out in a totally different sort of platform than necessarily the dev portal.
So you're taking the user research that you did early on in terms of what are the pain points they can solve. You go through a bit of a prototyping stage, and then from there, once you have a clear path, then you can choose whatever platform you want to develop it on.
Exactly, yeah. And I am not I have a little bit of coding experience, and actually when I graduated from college, I thought that the only way to really begin practicing in the tech industry with natural language was to become really good at Python. So I was like, okay, sign me up for all these like coding boot camps. Let me just figure out how to like become really good at coding. And of course, that's so not the case. That's just not how, I mean, visual graphic designers are not coders necessarily. So it's the same exact thing with voice. And that's why like these tools that you are creating and others are, they are basically enabling people that are not developers and are maybe on the just creative language writing side to actually begin wireframing a true experience, and then they can, you know, I believe with your tools, they can translate it into the language that those developer platforms will use, right?
Cool. And with multimodal coming in now with Alexa and Google Assistant and pretty much every other brand with voice, they're coming with screens. We seem to have this new marriage of voice with graphic designers coming in and saying, yeah, we know how to do design on those screens. But now as a, you know, like the initial part of it was that, you know, when these devices were audio only, you had to be very careful about what you write and how you read text versus how you hear it and how you speak it are two different things.
Yeah.
Now you have like a merge of both happening. How do you see that evolving?
Yeah, so another great point. I think that the future is just completely multimodal. We're not going to lose screens that quickly, and I think voice is going to become an extremely valuable input mechanism. But of course, you can read, you can scan a lot faster than you can hear a string of text. So it just makes a lot of sense to be merging output on a screen with input with voice. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I think there's going to be a ton of interdisciplinary collaboration between the visual side of voice experiences and also like the even just the audio side of experiences that were originally visual as well. And yeah, I mean, especially with mixed reality, virtual reality, that all has become very relevant as well.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody yesterday about HoloLens and how they have Cortana built into HoloLens, and he was telling me that his daughter, I think it was like 9 or 10-year-old daughter, who tried it for the first time, and it was very natural for us to look around. And as soon as she realized she could just talk to the device, she stopped doing everything else. She was just like looking around and saying, "Hey, Cortana, do this. And what is this?" And I was like, "That's natural extension for the multimodal AR, VR coming in there too." It's awesome.
Yeah, exactly. And then you can even use gestures in those situations as well.
Oh. This leads me to my next question, which is sort of like, what do you see as a future for this industry? What are you excited about? What are you frustrated about? You know, where do you see this industry going? And as a designer, as somebody who's building products in this space, what's your view?
Yeah. As you know, every single day, almost, it seems like there's some new big news coming out about voice and the big advancements by everybody in this space. I think that we're at this really exciting point where we're not necessarily truly conversational yet. I think there's a lot of progress we need to make, and not just like technical progress, but sort of philosophical questions about how we want these assistants to be interacting with us, right? Like we could start designing these assistants to be super tuned into context, super tuned into tiny little cues. We could give them little cameras so that they can read our gestures and our body language, but at that point, it's not really a matter of how, but it's a matter of if we want to do that. So there are important conversations kind of going on right now, and I think we need to keep having these conversations about the ethics of AI, and especially in something as emotional as voice. A lot of interesting social and sociological questions come up about gender and you know, everything imaginable, because voice is inherently super emotional for humans.
That's true. Well, there's definitely a emerging field, and we're just scratching the surface. I agree with you. Every day I open up Twitter and I'm like, okay, what changed? And everything changes. I've been following the hashtag voice first for a while now, and just in that space about conversation on voice alone, there's everything happening. And then we forget about all the other ones where it's now your customer support on intercom is text chats. We rarely get emails about support. We get a lot of messages because people are comfortable with that. And the same thing on Messenger, WeChat. Every time I talk to somebody who is in that part of the world, it amazes me what they are able to do naturally on conversational platforms. And I'm like, okay, we have a lot of things to catch up on that.
Yeah, and I mean, there's an article today even about how somebody is predicting that voice will replace keyboards in like the next 5 years. Like I mean, I don't know if it's going to be that extreme, but it makes perfect sense that there's no reason we should be manually, stringing words together with our hands when it's so much easier, and the tech is now at a point to where it can really receive like natural human language.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Well, thanks again for joining me, and I hope I'm looking forward to looking at the Bill lingo, because I think that should be something very interesting for everybody who's in that space. As CMS solutions are I think very few of them out there right now that are tackling that kind of problem. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, it's exciting. Thank you so much for having me on as well.
All right. Thank you. And we'll see you soon.